Hey fam, it's Sayada from Grow Mighty Leaders, helping you grow mighty inside and step into your life in the ways that you'd really like to, even when you have people that you're responsible for and stuff to do. I'm here to help you claim your true power, your true potential, your true energy through the magic of simple systems and self-regulation. So today we're going to be talking about something a little different, which is the idea of understimulation. So we have a different video on overstimulation. We'll link to that in the comments. You can check it out. And that talks about how to recognize the body cues of overstimulation, what it even means, and what are some ways that we can address our overstimulation. But overstimulation is only part of the picture because we have 5 filters or gears that we use to process all of the different input that we're taking in from the world, whether it's light, sound, whether it's the things that we're touching. We always are processing them on a mental level, on an emotional level, on a physical or body state level, on an environmental level, or on a social level, often a combination of these. And it's easy to think, because we live in a world that has so much stimulation, that overstimulation is the main thing that we need to worry about. For many of us it is, but it's actually about being in the sweet spot of your gear functioning at optimum speed. And that's why I like to use the term gear. I was inspired in the term gear by the book Burnout by Amelia Nagoski, Dr. Amelia Nagoski, and her sister Amelia Nagoski. And they talk about that when we're burned out, often we're only burned out in 1 or 2 gears. And so if we can understand what gear we're burnt out in, then we can actually make changes to rely on another gear. Even when we still have stuff to do, we don't have to stop completely in order to rest that gear. And I took that concept and basically unpacked it through the lens of sensory inputs and sensory processing disorder and autism and all this stuff, and helped put some language around the specific filters and ways that we process information. I found this really valuable regardless of whether you have sensory processing disorder or autism. This is something that everybody I talk to, I perceive, can relate to. We all occasionally get overstimulated. We all occasionally get overwhelmed. There's occasionally too much to think about, too much to, feel, and emotions coming in, and that's normal. But the truth is that this idea of being burned out or overstimulated is only half the picture. In that sweet spot, if we are below our sweet spot when it comes to our filters and the amount of stuff that they have to process, then that can actually be a form of dysregulation as well. That can drive dysregulation. We don't always need down-regulating. Sometimes we need up-regulating. But it may not always be obvious, especially if there are forms of understimulation that you've navigated your whole life or for an extended period of time. For example, when I was a kid, I was hyperactive a la max. I was always climbing things, climbing people, jumping, moving. It's kind of weird to think that I actually thought of myself as lazy when I think back, because I was always in motion. And it was easy to see, just like it's easy to see for my nephew, who has a ton of energy. He's 6.5 now, but I remember when he was 4 and he'd just be running around everywhere. It was like, okay, maybe this person is perhaps a little understimulated physically. He clearly needs upregulation. He needs to move, just like I needed to move as a kid in order to be centered and be level. These days though, I've gotten pretty good at sitting. I've gotten pretty good at sitting still over the years, and my hyperactivity sometimes comes out in other ways. So in terms of that dysregulation, in terms of that needing to be upregulated, it's not always as obvious. So for me, one sign that I'm understimulated is often that I'm talking a lot. Now, why I'm talking is often a good thing for me to kind of consider, because sometimes I'm talking because I genuinely, there's something I want to explain, or I feel really excited about, or I'm sharing, and that's not quite what I'm talking about here. Sometimes when I'm understimulated, it's actually easier to keep talking than it is to stop talking. And the way I found this out is that my partner, his mental gear does get overloaded fairly simply. And so, we've developed this practice where if I'm sharing, he or other people in my household will basically just say, hey, I'm kind of hitting my mental limit for mental stim. And I'll be like, oh, okay. And, it's basically screen what I'm saying a little bit more so that I'm not kind of just talking and rambling. But through this process, I came to realize that sometimes it was actually really hard. Not because I really wanted to keep talking or even that I felt offended, but because it was physically difficult to stop talking. Like, I would be quiet for a moment and then 2 seconds later, I'd find myself kind of filling the space. And the stuff that I was saying was not necessarily always, or often in those moments, stuff that was super important or I needed to convey. It was just difficult to stop. So not only was that kind of a huge understanding, a huge thing to realize in a bunch of different ways, but we came to realize that, in those moments, I'll just say, hey, I think I might need help upregulating. And in those moments, I often will need to put on a podcast or music or something to watch. And it's not necessarily that, it's not at all, actually, let me qualify. This is not that I'm overwhelmed and need to numb out, or I kind of want to check out. I want to be very clear to differentiate those two, because those are both sensory situations. Those are both situations that are addressable in both different forms of dysregulation, but they're different. In this case, I basically needed something to bring my level of mental stimulation up just enough that I was able to exist in that sweet zone and basically not like self-medicate by generating. My system is recognizing on some level in those moments that I don't have enough in the mental department going on, like in the filter for my mental gear to be processing. So it's adding stuff basically into the space and into the void. Just by adding something, and I can kind of tell how much upregulation I need because sometimes music is enough and I can kind of do something with my hands. Sometimes I'll find myself, if I'm alone and there isn't someone to talk to, I'll find myself scrolling on my phone. And scrolling on my phone can be a bit funny because I'll start out doing it because I'm understimulated, but eventually that flood of dopamine from whatever the scroll is will actually start to overstimulate me. And sometimes it will be basically overstimulating me environmentally, like staring at the screen and kind of having stuff intaking, but it's still difficult for me to do anything else. And a lot of the time, that's a cue that I'm actually physically understimulated as opposed to mentally overstimulated. Now, I'm using myself as an example, but this is something that, this language, this capacity has helped not just me, but my household, my team, and even clients. It's helped me understand and kind of unpack what's going on for them on a little bit of a more specific and neutral level. And heck, it has really helped me as well. So I speak, referencing myself because I want to share from a personal lens, which is where I'm at. But this isn't just me, this is a lot of other people that I've observed. Not everybody struggles with talking too much, but other people I know might struggle with basically scrolling, pulling out video games, that sort of a thing. And again, it's gonna look different why we're doing it for each person. But when I'm physically understimulated, when I need more physical action, it's kind of counterintuitive, but one of the signs that I'm understimulated physically is actually that my body aches or that I'm in pain. Sometimes my chronic pain, and as you may know from other videos, I suffer from a few different types of chronic pain and physical dysregulation, all of which are healing and on the mend, but all of which, require a lot of discernment to understand what it means moment to moment, because sometimes I'm in pain because I've overdid it. Sometimes I'm in pain because I overdid it, but I don't have the capacity to go out for a walk or move. But sometimes I'm in pain from sitting too much. Sometimes I'm in pain from not getting enough movement, actually. And it's not always that it feels like I can't sit still or that I feel overwhelmed. Sometimes it's kind of sneaky because when you're in pain, your first thought is not like move around. It might be stretch sometimes, that's actually another really good sign. A cue that you might be understimulated physically might be that you're sore and tense and kind of need to stretch. But if we're talking, your sciatic, you're finding a shooting pain down one leg or your back is hurting or stuff like that, those could be cues either way. They could be cues that something's overstimulated in your body, and they could be cues that you are understimulated in your body and you actually need movement. So don't take what I'm saying as the word of gospel, so to speak, for what this will look like for you. This, unlike the overstim video, is a lot more about the different ways that it can present itself so that you can start to observe mindfully, start to look at what's going on in your body and what it might be telling you without necessarily jumping straight to the emotional reaction or to reducing the stressor itself, that like something here doesn't work and needs to change, or that I'm just broken or something like that. Our bodies have so much information for us, but it's like they're telling us in a different language. The things our body was evolved to do, the way that humans have lived, our lifestyles for thousands, literally thousands of years, are very different than our lifestyles now. The forms of input that are coming in, the things that are stressing us out, are all very different from the things that were stressing us out and the forms of input that we were getting even 100 years ago. So one of the most powerful tools in our arsenal is simply to start to listen and kind of detach ourselves from the meaning and emotion in terms of the judgments and start to understand, okay, what is my body trying to tell me that it needs? What is my body saying to me? And what are some ways that I can communicate back to it in a language that it understands? An example of this is that if I am, for instance, noticing that I've been sitting for an hour or two and I'm starting to kind of feel sore and I'm kind of starting to shift in my seat, maybe my body is trying to tell me that I need to move around. Or if I've been staring at a screen a long time and I'm finding that I'm getting a little bit of a headache or my eyes are feeling tired, then often that's my body trying to tell me that I need a break, that I need to kind of refocus my eyes. So speaking to my body in a language that it understands means telling it that you're doing something to fill that need. So often this is action-based. Our body understands actions. Thoughts, maybe in time we can just speak to our body with our thoughts and have it respond, but right now our thoughts are kind of like our language that we communicate in that it doesn't understand. So it doesn't understand that, oh, I'm gonna go for a walk in 2 hours. Maybe it understands that I'm just getting up and moving around and kind of stretching and going through a range of motion. And that doesn't mean that it's all fixed, but that can tell my body, yes, I'm doing something to address this. Yes, I'm adjusting it. You don't have to get as stressed out about it because I'm aware, I hear you. And then when you go for that bigger walk later or something, you're telling your body, yes, it was right to kind of listen to that cue and cool off on the increasingly intense signals that I need to move around because I did the thing. Similarly, I can tell my body in a language, if my body's hungry, I can tell it that food is coming by having a bit of an appetizer. Or even sometimes I can tell it that food is coming by setting the table, by doing the things that I do right before I eat. And if appetite is a problem, you forget to eat, or sleeping is a problem, then this can be really powerful because we are telling our body it's time to eat or it's time to sleep with rituals and routines and actions that we've shown it over time mean it's time to eat or it's time to sleep. And then our body can actually start to get behind that and start to do things in the background in our subconscious to actually prepare us for eating or prepare us for sleep, like wind down our brains and wind down our systems. So the power of ritual is not to be underestimated when we're learning the language that our body can understand, and also when we're understimulated. Recognizing that we're understimulated, it requires regular interaction with our body. It requires a bit of trial and error. It requires dipping our toes into different things instead of committing full hard and then listening to what our body is saying, what our body is telling us. Because being understimulated can be a lot sneakier than being overstimulated. All right, what did you think about this? Did it help you? What are some ways that you get understimulated? How do you know when you're bored? That can be a good place to start for people. What are some cues that you need a little bit more? That, you're feeling lonely might be another cue that you're overstimulated. Sometimes we're lonely for a specific person. Sometimes we just are feeling alone. That can be a body cue that we are needing more input of people that we love. That doesn't mean you have to go out to like some huge event or something. Maybe it means that you have a phone call with somebody that you cherish, or even look through pictures of good times you've had with someone else if it's not a moment where you can engage directly, or you don't have the stamina or capacity for that. This is a back and forth process, and it is worth it, because understanding this and being able to have that back and forth with your body gets your body on your team. And let me tell you, if you've ever been on, let's say, a group project trying to execute something, and there's someone on your team, it's just you and someone else, and you really don't get along, and you're at odds, and you're trying to kind of overcome each other every time, well, a lot of your energy goes into that rather than actually achieving the thing, does it not? It's the same thing with our bodies. If we're putting a lot of energy into fighting our bodies, into repressing our needs, into overcoming our needs just through sheer force of will, then we're actually putting a lot of energy into fighting something that could be our biggest ally, that we could be putting into showing up in our life, that we could be putting into meeting our needs or regulating ourselves. And that is powerful. That is the path. All right, so as always, like, subscribe, share. If there's someone that you think you've noticed that perhaps they were understimulated sometimes, or, they might be thinking of themselves as overloaded in one area, and you might think, hey, what if they're actually underloaded in a different area and it's showing up as overload? An example of this might be when you're feeling numb. Feeling numb could be because you're overloaded, or it could be because you are in need of some love and compassion and some sort of sensory input, like a warm hand on your shoulder or a hug even. Anyway, I'm getting off topic, but please do share if you know someone that you think could benefit from this video. Like, subscribe, hit the bell button, drop in the comments ways that you know that you're understimulated, or if you have questions about being understimulated, or if you're not sure if something is overstimulation or understimulation. I would love to hear it. Other people would love to hear it. The more we work together in this, the more that we choose cooperation over competition, the mightier we all become. And we all get to be on each other's team. And that, let me tell you, is a powerful force. And it feels good. All right, fam. This is Sayada from Grow Mighty Leaders signing out, hoping that you have a mighty day and wishing you all the best in your Grow Mighty Inside journey. Have a good one.